Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, once again. I hope you enjoyed your lunch break. So without making further delays, let's start our next session, which is on the role of values and ethics. So before that, I would like to welcome and introduce our next guest speaker for the day, who have ample amount of knowledge in various diversified field of academic research. So we have Dr. Yogesh Valenka. Dr. Yogesh Valenka earned his PhD in engineering education from Purdue University, USA. He holds an MS in electrical engineering and MED, that is MEd, in mathematics education as an instructional specialist, both from the University of Texas at El Paso, USA. His BE is in electronic and telecommunication engineering from Mumbai University, India. Presently, Dr. Yogesh Valenka is Professor, Department of Electric Engineering and Principal at Cambridge Institute of Technology, Bangalore, India. Dr. Valenka has worked in USA and in India in multinational and diverse organizations such as Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, Indian Institute of Technology, BHU, Varanasi, Indo-Universal Collaboration for Engineering Education, IUCEE, Infosys Limited, and Caterpillar, and others. Dr. Valenka also has academic research and teaching experience across various educational levels in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, humanities, social science, management, and leadership domain. He has also been selected by MOE as a mentor and performance auditor under the third phase of Technical Education Quality Improvement Program, TEQIP 3. He is also a mentor for Central Sector Scheme of Government of India with support from the World Bank. He also contributes as an expert source person for various capacity building initiatives under TEQIP 3. Dr. Valenka has also been a member of an academic council and course coordinator for the course entitled Information and Communication Technology for Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics Education at Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, IISER, Bhopal, which has been designated as a National Resource Center, NRC, for offering annual refreshers program in teaching, ARPIT, through the MOOC platform Swayam. All India Council for Technical Education, AICTE, MOE, has nominated Dr. Valenka as a Margdarshak under the Margdarshak initiative with an aim to mentor and enable technical education institution to achieve accreditation by National Board of Accreditation. Welcome, sir. Now I request you to please take the session forward.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Komal, and a very good afternoon to all the participants gathered here this afternoon. First of all, let me express my sincere gratitude to the organizing team and for inviting me and giving me this platform to interact with you this afternoon and to talk about a very important topic on role of values and ethics. First of all, I hope everyone is doing safe. I know these are very difficult times, but hopefully you are taking care of yourselves without letting your guard down, and let us continue to do so, and I'm sure we will overcome all the challenges together. So let us remember COVID appropriate behavior at all times. Now, this 1 week program, I believe we have faculty participants from various parts of the country and perhaps with variable years of experience in the teaching profession. Very interestingly, the topic of this entire 1 week program relates to NBA accreditation and the various systems and the processes associated with it. So you might be wondering, what are we doing this afternoon talking about the role of values and ethics? So let me begin the conversation by sharing with you my experience about, I would say, 3 to 4 years back. I think it was about 4 years back. when I had a chance to attend the World Summit on Accreditation, which was organized by our Indian body NBA, which is the National Board of Accreditation. And this World Summit on Accreditation takes place, I think maybe it's a biannual event, or I don't really remember the periodicity of it, but it's either an annual or a biannual event. And every year it is, or every whatever the frequency is, it is held in different parts of the world. So around 4 years back, I think it was held in India with NBS hosting the event. And this is an event, it's the main event wherein all the different accreditation bodies of the world gather together and exchange best practices. And there is, it's like any other academic conference where there would be lots of different research presentations, keynote talks, and thought leaders talking about various aspects of accreditation and so on. So almost all the major heads of the accreditation bodies in various parts of the world, they were in attendance at this conference. I was also presenting a paper with one of my colleagues, and I had a chance to attend this particular event, right? So we were listening to the keynote, and we were hearing from all the different heads of these accreditation bodies. And can you imagine, just take a guess, what was the biggest challenge to accreditation that I must have heard, or that was really outlined in that particular conference by almost all the leaders of these accreditation bodies worldwide, right? I'm not just talking about India, it's almost from all parts of the world. Each and every leader of the accreditation bodies, there was one common theme running across all these accreditation agencies. One biggest challenge that they all presented in front of all of us. And what could that have been? You have the chat box in front of you. You might want to take some guess on this. Some of you might be familiar with the accreditation process. I'm sure from the last day and a half, you've been listening to some of the basic tenets of accreditation. What is outcome-based education? What are some of the things involved? So I'm sure you must have had some exposure. So I encourage you to think about, anticipate what could have been the biggest challenge in the accreditation process. The chat box is in front of you, I can see. You may feel free to take a guess. What do you think is the biggest challenge in the accreditation process? Collect past year's data. Yes, okay. Amandeep Kaur. Yes, a lot of data collection. Okay. What else? Morality and ethics. Okay. Yes. Yes. Trust on data. Okay. SFR. Okay. Yes. Some things are sometimes out of our control, but yeah, okay. What are some of the other things that come to your mind? Let me see who else is here today. Okay, we have many participants. Let me see. Okay. All right. So, Meena Khatri, can you unmute yourself? Meena Khatri, am I audible to you? I think you have the ability to unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. They can. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So Meena, go ahead. Please unmute. In the meantime, all others, please continue to type in the chat box. My question is very simple and straightforward. What do you think is the biggest challenge in the accreditation process? I think since the past day and a half at least, you've been starting to think about what is the accreditation methodology all about? What are some of the basic principles? You must have heard about NBA until now. Okay, let me call upon somebody else. How about Priyanka? Priyanka Batra. Please unmute. Yes, you have also given a response. Okay, anybody else who can unmute themselves? Go ahead and unmute. I'm calling upon any volunteer participant. If you are there in front of the system and if you can unmute yourself, go ahead and unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Who's this? Introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, this is Dr. Arun Khatri.
Yeah, Dr. Arun. So, which institute you are from?
I am from Presidency University, Bangalore.
Okay, fine. So, what do you anticipate as the biggest challenge in the accreditation process?
So the biggest challenge what I have felt is the documentation process and motivating all the members to towards the common goal. They are the two things.
Okay, okay, fine. All right. Thank you, Dr. Arun, for your response. You may also
Most
mute
welcome,
yourself.
sir.
Yeah.
Most welcome,
Okay.
sir.
Great. All right. So some of you are, definitely you are feeling the necessity for documenting all the efforts that you have taken. Yes, that is an important part of it. Some of you are also said that the documentation, even though you maintain, must be fair, accurate, record keeping. Yes, a lot of similar responses we are also getting in the chat box. And yes, of course, couple of you have mentioned morality and ethics, trust on the data, and let me see what else, maintaining quality standards, relevant information, proper presentation. See, and measurable values. I think Purnima Devi is also saying that. So yes, so these just the, more than anything else, as I said, during my attendance in this World Summit on Accreditation, all the heads of these accreditation agencies worldwide outlined that ethical practices in the accreditation process was their biggest challenge. And this really, underpinned the entire conversation. And these ethical practices, when they referred to these ethical practices, it was from from the perspective of all the stakeholders. So that means they were also talking about not only the institution that was undergoing the accreditation, but even the accreditators themselves, the expert committee that visits, everybody and anybody involved in the accreditation process, even the experts, finding experts who can maintain high quality standards, finding, that kind of a common ethical framework which is implemented by everybody, or even trying to, have a proper measurement methodologies which will give you a fair sense of what is happening in the institution. So how do we really go about doing all these things in the most ethical manner possible? That was the biggest challenge, as I heard, and I really don't think that must have changed over a number of years. That continues to remain. See, we have so many institutions in India. If you look at the challenge of accreditation across higher education, we need a large pool of trained assessors, a large pool of faculty members who can be part of the accreditation committees, who might be well trained themselves to be able to conduct these kind of accreditation exercises. So that is, the biggest challenge in front of us. So we really need to ensure that all kinds of ethical practices are followed, are adhered to in everything that we do. Now, let us, specifically talk about, let me start sharing my screen. Just give me a minute here. Yeah. Okay. I think now my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So by the way, these are my contact details. I welcome you to stay in touch with me, and I'm looking forward to continue our association. So once again, as you know, today we are talking about the role of values and ethics. And just take a minute to think about this, right? All of you are involved in quality education. All of you are striving for quality education. And you have several stakeholders in any educational ecosystem. It can be your academic leaders, administrators, the faculty members themselves, your support staff, and the students, as well as, if you look at it in a very holistic manner, then of course, the entire society, the parents, and, everybody else in some way or the other is connected to the education ecosystem. And just as in any profession, you can think about medicine, you can think about law, you can think about engineering. Every profession also has a set of values and a set of ethical practices and standards that they adhere to, that they are really abiding by. So for instance, let us look at IEEE. As you know, IEEE is the apex body for electrical and electronics engineering worldwide. So let's have a quick look at what IEEE talks about in their code of conduct or code of ethics, right? So look at this. So members of IEEE, in recognition of the importance of our technologies in affecting the quality of life throughout the world, and in accepting a personal obligation to our profession, its members, and the communities we serve, do hereby commit ourselves to the highest ethical and professional conduct and agree to do the following. Now, what is that following? It is a set of guidelines. As I said, it's a set of code of ethics. And I'm just using this as an example, right? Of course, it gives a lot of details, but let's just read the main point here. To uphold the highest standards of integrity, responsible behavior, and ethical conduct in professional activities. And under this umbrella, there are so many specific points that has been outlined. So IEEE, as a worldwide body, professional body of electrical and electronics engineers, really takes its job very seriously. All engineers really need to take this kind of a oath or this kind of a commitment towards upholding these kind of code of ethics and code of practice. Okay, you can really refer to these guidelines even on the web. Look at the second important point here: to treat all persons fairly and with respect, to not engage in harassment or discrimination, and to avoid injuring others. Similarly, to strive to ensure that this code is upheld by colleagues and co-workers. So not only us, but we also have to ensure that all those around us with whom we share the workplace, they also need to adhere to these kind of best practices. And only then, collectively as a profession, we can ensure that we are meeting the quality parameters that we are committing ourselves to. So similar to IEEE, I'm sure some of you may be from different domains. I think even in the field of management, you have several worldwide professional bodies. They also have their code of conduct. If you are from the field of pharmacy, I think Pharmaceutical Council of India, they have their own code of ethics. As I said, medical council, the law council, all the different domains. Or you are from computer science, perhaps ACM has a set of guidelines, or IEEE Computer Society may have its own set of guidelines. So each and every domain, any professional body really tries to outline what that particular professional is supposed to be doing once we qualify as that particular professional. So the acquisition of the degree is not just a qualification of the coursework and other things that you have completed, but it also puts a very big responsibility on any person. And along with that responsibility, they also have accountability to their profession. So just as in any domain of study or any disciplinary area, we have these kind of code of ethics. Similarly, in a similar manner, let me ask a question to all of you. I mean, the one common thing that we all share is that we are all teachers, right? So I'm sure all of you are faculty members and you've been, engaged in the educational practice in some or the other way. And if that is the common thread between all of us, are you aware that are there any code of ethics or code of conduct for teachers? Does your institution have any specific guidelines for you as faculty members to adhere to? Are you aware, maybe at the national level or international level, are there any such code of ethics similar to what I just outlined here with respect to IEEE in the engineering domain? Is anybody familiar with, or does any institution which you belong to have any specific handbook or code of ethics for you specifically as faculty members? That is my question to all of you. So if anybody has, first of all, let me ask you, I can see about 89 participants are online. My first question, let me start here. Is there anybody here in whose institution you have a code of ethics or something of that sort, and maybe a handbook or a set of guidelines which all faculty members have to follow? I can see one hand is raised up. Dr. Arun, yes, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Actually, I had worked with the MIT University earlier.
Okay.
So they had a very good set of this code of conduct, especially for the faculty, how to dress, how to behave, and how to do work. So everything was clearly mentioned in that handout.
Okay.
And there is always an orientation program whenever new faculty join in, and they make it very clear what is expected from the faculty members, and that is throughout all the campuses of MIT.
Okay, very nice. That's a very good practice. Thank you for sharing.
That's it.
Yeah. I welcome other participants also in case you have had. I think we see some more hands going up. Dr. Gayatri Dhingra, please go ahead. Yeah, Dr. Gayatri, you can unmute yourself also. I think you have typed something in the chat box. Yeah. Okay, you are saying perhaps your institution does not have it yet, but you agree that this is a good idea.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Really, it's really wonderful. We are not implementing it, but it's every institute, small or big, should have it. It's really good thing that you have shared with us.
Okay. Fine. Very nice. Especially in your orientation in your institution, Dr. Gayatri, did anybody tell you that, this is what you have to do, or you just kind of, how long are you working with your current institution, and which institution is yours?
Sir, we are following basic ethics.
Yeah.
Okay, but actually this code of conduct is not there. I think it's not there in all the institutes. I must say. Not only in my institutes, in all the institutes.
Okay, fine. Okay, good. I think Rajaratnam Senthil Kumar, I think you also have something to say. Please go ahead and unmute.
Yes, sir. Our college is coming under Anna University Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
Anna University Tamil Nadu has set up some regulation ethics.
Okay.
Those who are affiliated to Anna University should follow those ethics and regulations.
Very nice. Very nice.
And another thing, I just seen this code of ethics similar to IEEE in Python.org. Python Software Foundation.
Where? Python what? Software?
Python Software Foundation. Those
Python Software Foundation.
Those who are getting fund from the Python.org to conduct seminars and conferences, all those things. They should follow their ethics.
Okay, okay, fine, fine. Yes, very, very good point. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Uh, Dr. Senthil Kumar, let me just ask you one question. This Anna University guidelines, have you looked at them?
Yes,
Code
sir.
of
Yes, sir.
Ethics?
Yeah.
Okay,
Regulation 2017. We have
okay,
we are going, each and every colleges and engineering colleges affiliated to an university should
yeah,
follow those regulations and terms and conditions ethics and all.
very nice. Thank you so much. Yeah,
College environment in the campus, uh,
okay,
how to behave,
yes,
what should be the attendance percentage and all those things.
okay, okay,
What is the
excellent.
relationship with student and staff,
Yeah,
all those things.
good, very nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, now let's go to some other participants. You can also mute yourself now. Bhavna Suri, unmute yourself, please. Bhavna. Okay. Isha Madan, please unmute.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Isha. Which institute you are from?
I'm working in GVM Institute of Technology and Management. So
Okay.
as such, we don't have any code of conduct book. But as I'm working as a faculty there, so I
Yeah.
think that as a faculty, we all are following the basic code of conduct that we need to follow in our real life.
Okay, but basic code of conduct, like it is as good as saying, yes, we are all good human beings and we have some, values and traditions that we follow. But do we really know what that basic code of conduct is? I mean, has anybody explicitly talked about it in your institution as such?
Not as such, sir, but in general life, if I talk about as a faculty only, I'm teaching it
Yeah.
management students life. See,
Yeah.
I'm teaching a student in my class, so I'll make sure that not only getting the marks is important, but the
Yeah.
marks, how he scored or how she scored the marks, that is more important. It means the ethics and the basic things that a student should keep in mind, that knowledge is important rather than only marks. It means I used to keep these things in mind, like as a faculty.
Okay, fine, fine. So yes, thank you so much for sharing, Isha. Let me go to some other participants also. Tushar Deep Saxena, please unmute. Tushar Deep Saxena. Okay, just I would request all participants to be alert. Namita Ahuja, hopefully you are having a stable internet connection, not too many connection issues there. Namita Ahuja, please unmute. Okay. Next is Pooja Malik.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Pooja. Which institute you are from?
Sir, I'm also from GVM Institute of Technology and Management.
Okay. Any
Yes,
exposure
yes.
to this code of ethics anywhere in academia or industry or anything like that?
Sir, I would say that in written form we don't have, but yes, like if I'll talk about the principal HOD of our institute, they are continuously telling us a lot of things, and we are following those things.
Which subjects do you teach generally there?
Sir, HRM.
HRM. Okay, fine. So, I think many of our participants may also be here from the management background, and many of your colleagues may also be here. And especially that you are teaching, this human resource management subjects. I'm sure that many of you also have exposure to a lot of the industries that your students might be, getting their career opportunities in. And not only in academia, especially if you look at all the major companies in the world, they definitely, through their HR department and through their human resource management practices, they generally have employee handbook, and that always, more often than not, it always has some kind of code of conduct, or some kind of policy which the employees, when they join the company, they agree to that, following those kind of protocols to maintain the integrity, to maintain the values
Yes,
system
sir.
of the organization. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are correct, sir.
I think you must be even teaching some of these things to your students in your HRM subjects.
Yes, sir.
Perhaps, yeah. So see, every company, most of the industries, whether they are small, medium, or large, they will typically have a code of conduct, which they would expect their employees to practice and to really live by. They will have a set of values. They will outline their value system. What do they believe in? And you must have seen this is a very, very prevalent trend across the industrial domain. Similarly, if you think about it in academics, as I said, most of you might be familiar with something like an IEEE code of conduct, or in your own professional domain. But yes, of course, you might be an engineer, you might be a management professional, you might be a lawyer, you might be a medical doctor, so on and so forth. But you are all faculty members. So we are also part of the teaching fraternity. And for us, what really can we live by? What are the set of values? What are the set of, the ethical practices that we can familiarize ourselves with, especially in the context of higher education, right? So once again, give me a minute here. I'm going to share my screen once more. Just a minute. Just a minute. Yeah, I think now my screen might be visible to all of you. It's coming up.
Yes.
Okay. So this is what we were just last discussing, the IEEE Code of Ethics. And now let us, move our attention to our teaching fraternity, and what are the set of values or the code of ethics, or are there any guidelines? Let us look at that, right? So I'm going to share with you this 2019 publication by UGC. Look at this. It's called Mulya Prabha, Inculcation of Human Values and Professional Ethics in Higher Educational Institutions. The basic fundamental premise of this document is what I have mentioned there, that the success of an institution's mission and vision is driven by value-based ethical behavior of its committed faculty members, officers, staff, and students. So within our higher education context, these are the various stakeholders that we are talking about. And at the highest levels, even our regulatory bodies, once they realized, we should really try to outline what are these set of human values and professional ethics, especially in the academic context, how we can really articulate them, and how we can provide a guidance document for all the faculty, all the teachers, and hence this can be a reference point for all of us. I'm not really sure how many of you have gone through this document. It is available on the UGC website. I encourage you after today's session to download this ebook. It's available freely in the form of an ebook as well, and really go through it in detail. But today, now, I would, for the next few minutes, would like to highlight some of the salient points from this particular handbook. So if we consider all the stakeholders that we just described, right, these are the faculty members, officers, staff, and students. In this context, what are the general set of values and ethics? Let us look at them one by one, right? And we have tried to articulate them. And this is, I think this documentation was developed through the efforts of an expert committee that was formed at the national level. And they took a series of inputs from various academicians, educationists, and looking at the best practices worldwide. And here are the things that we should take note of. Okay. The first one being integrity. Now I will let you all read what integrity means in our context. Then we'll move on to the next one. I'll give you a minute for each of these points. There are about 8 to 9 points. So one by one, let us just have a look at it. In case you have never seen this document before, this is the right time for us to at least gain familiarity with some of the important points which are being mentioned here. So this is what I want to bring to your notice today. Okay. Look at this, integrity. The next one is trusteeship. Again, I'm going to let you read the details of each and every point. Followed by harmony. Next is accountability. Then inclusiveness. See, all of these apply to all the stakeholders, faculty, students, staff, so on and so forth. Okay. Then next is commitment. Respectfulness. See, as you read these different values, I'm sure you can relate to them. As some of you have mentioned, there is like an unspoken rule that everybody lives by, but you know, we all kind of try to adhere to the highest standards of our professional practice. But these are the kinds of attributes that we might be exhibiting, you know, either consciously or subconsciously. Then comes, you know, belongingness. And finally, we talk about sustainability. So commitment, respectfulness, belongingness, sustainability, and previously I think we saw integrity, trust, trusteeship, harmony, accountability, and inclusiveness, right? These are the different values and ethics that are common for everybody. But are there specific, you know, norms for teachers? Yes, we can think about that. You know, that is our role, that is our responsibility, those are our duties. I think we kind of know what they are, but it's also good to, you know, have a clear articulation of what that actually means. So this handbook has tried to do that. So let us specifically focus on you know, the role of teachers, or with relation to teachers, what are the specific responsibilities or the duties in the context of values and ethics, right? So in our context, we are all faculty members, right? So teachers look at all these kind of roles and responsibilities. Just take a couple of minutes to read through these different roles and responsibilities in the framework of ethical and moral values. Okay, just I'll give you another 30 seconds to read through this. Then I'll move on to the next slide. There are some more points. Total 16 points are there. Okay. All right. Now, I just want to go back 1 minute. Okay, one of the points here, I'll escape the full screen mode here. 1 minute. Okay, just give me a minute. I think my screen is still visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Points are still visible, right? Okay. Now I can see the list of participants also. I want to ask some specific questions. I think now we have just had a quick overview of what teachers are supposed to be doing in the context of their role and responsibility in higher education, as well as what are the set of value system or the ethical practices for the education stakeholders. And these are all the things, in some way or the other, if your university or your specific institution may have outlined, more specific details to suit your own particular context, then of course you must have seen that kind of documentation. Similarly, as I mentioned, even in the industrial context, in the small, medium or large companies, they also have such kind of code of ethics or ethical practices or the roles and responsibilities that are generally outlined. So having a background of all these different points, you have looked at many of these things. So for instance, the first 9 points, I think, look at this, right? Act as a first point, act as a role model. Set a standard of dress, speech and behavior worthy of example to the students. How many of you are doing this? Raise your hand. The first point. Raise your hand if you are doing this. Yes, let me see. I have minimized my presentation so I can see all the participants. Raise your hand if you are following the first point. Acting as a role model for students by displaying good conduct, set a standard of dress, speech and behavior worthy of example to the students. How many people have raised the hand? Okay, maybe the others, are they not doing this, or they're not raising their hands, or what is going on? Okay. Let us see. Namita Ahuja, can you unmute yourself? Yeah, Namita, are you doing this first point?
Yes, sir, we are totally doing this thing.
Yeah, then why you are not raising your hand?
I have already raised my hand, sir.
Yes, where is it?
Okay,
okay, yeah, good. Okay, fine. Sorry, I did not see that.
No, sir, I have raised my hand.
Okay, fine. 1 minute. Wait. Since I'm in the presentation mode, could not see it very clearly. 1 minute. Then what about Jyoti Malik? What's going on with Jyoti or Dr. Rashmi? Rahul? Okay. Fine. Okay, fine. Now, one of those other points, it says, act as a friend, philosopher and guide of students. I'm sure many of you are doing this also. Then you are helping them identify their potential through counseling and mentoring. Yes, many of you do that. Observe punctuality, create conducive environment, exhibit decent behavior, refrain from harassment of student in any form. Have you faced any challenges in this area, harassment of the student? Or have you been on the other end of the harassment by the student? What have you done in these circumstances? Either the teacher may harass the student or the student may harass the teacher, right? Something like that may happen sometimes. Has anybody experienced that sort of thing? You may want to unmute and talk to us. Okay, now everybody can lower their hands. Thank you so much. Anybody who has had any exposure to harassment that you are comfortable talking about in this forum? Yeah, Purnima Devi or anybody else? Yeah, if you are comfortable, you can share your experience. I don't know, I mean, students also feel sometimes, that teachers are harassing them. That is, if you ask the students, they might express their point of view. And sometimes teachers may feel that the students are harassing them. That is also a possibility. Okay. Yeah, I mean, some institutions, it's a very collegial environment. There are no issues. Everybody is, very respectful and all those things. But many a times, these situations occur. I'm just wondering, have any one of you experienced or been in this type of a situation before? Okay, perhaps not. All right, let's move on. One of the other points it said, I think I'll go to the next slide. It says, develop an understanding of our heritage. Teachers would develop an understanding of our heritage. Has anybody done that in your subject or in your teaching practice? Have you developed an understanding of our heritage in our students? See, you might be teaching management subjects, you might be teaching engineering subjects, you might be teaching, computer programming, so many different topics you might be, handling for the students. But what about teaching them about our heritage? Has anybody done that in your coursework at any time? Or in any other way, even outside the coursework? Alvin Selvan, how about you? Please unmute. Alvin Selvan. Yeah. Which subject you are teaching?
Sir, I'm library, sir.
Library. Okay, very nice. So what about teaching the students or faculty about heritage? Have you done that?
Having that orientation program for freshers, sir.
Yeah, but in that orientation program, are you conducting any specific sessions for teaching them about our heritage?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Very
Yes.
nice. Very good. Which college? Which type of college is this? Engineering or which one?
Sir, I'm working as a Nachimuthu Polytechnic College, Pollachi, Coimbatore, sir.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Very nice.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. What about someone else? Charu Sharma. How about you? Have you taught your students about our heritage in your subject or through other means? Nisha Khurana, if you are there, please unmute.
Excuse me, sir, I would like to say something.
Yeah, Arun, go ahead.
Yeah. Sir, actually, we do this on several phases.
Mm-hmm.
First, we let them know that you belong to a very strong cultural country.
Yeah.
Right. So even if we are teaching subjects like management, which have been evolved in American and other countries,
Yeah.
still we are very good at management. And we tell them about the top companies managed by Indians and how beautifully they are managing them. Further, we also inculcate them with the learning from the scriptures, how a cool mind can do better things, and how coordination with your colleagues can achieve better results. So these are the things we keep on teaching them, that you should look inside you. Although the steps are the courses are coming from abroad, but still you need to find what is there which is good in us. Like in IT and in management, we are like in the top of the world. So we need to focus on them and to develop an you can say confidence in us. So this is the thing we try to inculcate in the students.
Yes, very good. And there is a need for doing more of this rather than ignoring this or not doing this at all. So definitely it's a good practice. Very nice. Thank you so much, Arun. And let me go to someone here, one of our participants. You have probably signed this number 12 or 12. So if you can unmute yourself, tell us who you are, where are you teaching, which subject you are working on. Somebody who has signed in as number 12, no? Is that like a participant number or what is this? Okay. So whenever faculty become in the role of students, they also don't want to respond. Is that right? Is that how it is? I think this is a common phenomenon you must have experienced in your online classes, right? You are calling upon the students and students are unable to unmute or they are not responding, right? It happens. It happens for many reasons. So how about Dr. J.N. Singh? Are you there?
Sir, can I share my experience?
Yeah, why not? I've been asking for people to come forward. So yes, Simi, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. Sir, I'm Simi Sharma, Assistant Professor, BPIT, Rohini, Delhi.
Okay.
Sir, I teach control systems.
Yes.
So I cannot say that directly my subject is directly related to this point, that our heritage, but we give examples to students so that they can correlate the things which are now automated and how our ancestors or the previous ages, that practice was already there. But we have modernized our things, keeping the base as our traditional practices. So like this way we can make a bridge between how earlier this process was conducted and how we are moving towards automation. So I mean, like this we so in this way we make a bridge or connect our students and make them realize how much advancement we have done in our engineering field.
Yes. See, very good point, Simi. In fact, as you know, many of our interactions with the students are not... Just I will request everybody. Itishri, you want to share something with us? Go ahead. We can hear your audio. So if you want to share something, this is the right time. Go on. Okay, perhaps not
Sir,
any problem.
Sir, there's one more thing I would like to ask. I mean, there's a point of ethics in this.
Yes.
So ethics here, how we say ethics. Ethics means that we are telling our students to genuinely, let's suppose genuinely give the test, don't get into the act of cheating. Here ethics is related to this thing, or does it mean anything else in this point, ethics?
Yeah, very good question, Simi. In fact, ethics and values are so intertwined concepts. It can mean practices which can, in the student context, typically when we think about ethics, we think about some kind of, avoiding malpractices, whether it is examination related or, things like plagiarism and this and that. So these are the common occurrences that you see, especially in the student domain. But ethical practices also means so many things that we have just outlined. that you are acting in a very integral manner. You are acting to the best of your abilities. Ethical practices also means, the ability to say no when something is outside the scope of your expertise. So, for instance, I'll just tell you, one example. Let's say a civil engineer, right? I'm just using a random example. A civil engineer who might, really have expertise in designing bridges, but may not have a lot of expertise in designing skyscrapers. So for example, if that particular engineer really gets hired on a skyscraper project, should that civil engineer accept that role and responsibility and become the project manager for that skyscraper project? Or should that civil engineer come forward and say, this is not really my domain of expertise, and I would rather stick to, maybe designing bridges or something like that. So this is also where, the questions of ethics come in, that you also have to be upholding the values of your profession, that you have to act in a morally right way, and you have to make sure that your actions or your behavior also do not cause harm to others. So that is also the broader context in which we are discussing the role of values and ethics, and especially from what is expected from a faculty standpoint. And yes, if we are conducting a similar session for our students, then yes, we will also outline a lot of role and responsibilities for the students also. In fact, as I said, after this session, I would encourage you to, download this particular ebook from the UGC website, and it outlines the different sets of guidelines or the norms for each and every stakeholder. You might be faculty, you might be an administrator, you might be a student, you might be the member of an expert committee, so on and so forth, or academic council, governing board, and whatnot. So each and every stakeholder has, a set of common principles that they can follow, but also some specific things that they need to keep a note of. Okay. So yes.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Earlier, I was trying to make another point. When you described your experience of, teaching maybe control systems to your students, as I was mentioning, the subject area is not the only place where we have interaction with our students. I mean, the course content delivery or the instructional period for a particular subject is not the only occasion for us to interact with our students. In an academic environment, see, there are so many different opportunities. It might be what you used to call, maybe cultural activities or sports activities or any kind of competitions or things, or even a counseling session or a mentoring session. In many of these, or a field trip for that matter, right? You take a field trip somewhere or doing an internship and whatnot. All these present plenty of opportunities for us to weave in our, cultural as well as an awareness of our heritage and our traditions as well. So these are also some of the pointers I would like to share with all faculty members, that proactively, through a variety of interactions that you have with your students, you can try to inculcate and give an exposure to your students about all these different aspects. Okay, fine. Very good. Are there any other questions or anybody who else would like to comment upon this? Yeah, Manisha is saying, I think in the subject of entrepreneurship, you talk about the things like family entrepreneurship. Yes, very good.
So good afternoon.
Yeah, Madhavan, go ahead.
So myself, Madhavan Ashok from Nachimuthu Polytechnic, Pollachi, Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
And I'm heading Mechanical Engineering Department. I'm also the Vice Principal of the Polytechnic.
Okay.
And recently we have introduced, because see, when we talk about the competency, it involves knowledge, skill, and attitude.
Yes.
So to impart knowledge and skill, we classify that as technical skill.
Okay.
And to develop the right attitude for the student, that includes all what you have shared.
Yes.
So for that we are teaching this professional skill for the students. Yes. We have 6 modules lined up, and we start from start from yoga for well-being, then sports for well-being, then finally we end up with the goal setting. All this will come. It is done in a modular form, and in the end we will prepare the students for the right placement. That is, we call it as campus to corporate. So this is how, and this is well integrated into our curriculum, and about 20 hours is spent for each module every semester.
Yes, yes, very nice. In fact, many of you are familiar even in the NBA accreditation, especially for engineering institutions, engineering and technology institutions. You have seen one of the graduate attributes or the program outcomes is also talks about ethics, and you try to do many things which relate to that, especially for the student welfare and development. But today we are also talking not only about the students, we are talking about the importance of values and ethics for the faculty members themselves. What should be the set of norms, what should be the set of guidelines that higher education faculty also need to think about as part of their role and responsibility in an academic institution. So yes, there is also a lot of similarity between what we would expect our students to follow, but at the same time, many of these principles also apply to us as faculty members. So let us bear that in mind. And for the last few minutes of our session now, for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I do want to present to you one small instance, one small case study. I would request all of you to read the case study, and I'm posing a question at the end of that scenario. I want you to think about that situation, and then let me get a few responses from some of the participants regarding that particular situation. What do you think about it? Now, this is, in the context of implementation of our ethical and value-based practices. Okay, so let me give you a very typical situation that you may perhaps encounter, especially when you are in the role of a faculty. Okay. Is my screen visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead and read this case study, small case study. I'll give you a few minutes to read through this. Okay, I think many of you must have read the situation. A small case study, if you have a postdoctoral student working with you, or you might be a postdoctoral student, you might want to think about this. I think some of you might even be pursuing your doctoral studies. You might even relate it to your own situation as a doctoral student and your own research guide. Perhaps, this might all sound too familiar to some of you. So in this situation, this postdoctoral fellow wishes to confront her mentor over this issue and has come to you for advice. What would you indicate to this postdoctoral fellow? What should be the next step? Okay, 1 minute. Yes. I'm sure you must have read through this. If you need another minute, yes, okay. Try to understand the situation clearly. Aarti Deveshwar, please unmute. Abhishek Bharadwaj. Amit Banga. Are you guys really facing a lot of internet connectivity issues, not able to unmute, or what's going on? Anil Agarwal. Next is Anu. Then I think Satish Kumar. Is that right? Am I saying it correctly? Or Charu Sharma. I would like you to respond, or anybody else who would like to volunteer. What would you do? I think you have understood the situation. If you were to give some advice in this case, what would you say? Deepali Virmani. Yeah, who is this? Somebody is trying to say something. Dr. Sunita.
Yes, I want to. Yes. I want to say that research is always a learning process. Whether we learn from our mentor, or we learn from our some superior, or we can learn from our junior also. So it is a bad thing that your ideas are pasted anywhere else, which is a wrong practice. And nowadays we see that senior professors or the mentors, they are using their juniors' work, and even in publication also, all the work is done by the doctoral fellows, and the added advantage has been taken by the superiors. So here, here the postdoc person has taken the idea from her mentor. If it is good, then up to some extent, if it is their understanding also, but taking the whole work of the postdoc fellow is very bad, because he is a senior one and he has to advise to their juniors not to take their work in their CVs or mention in their work.
Okay. So what would you tell the postdoc if she wants to confront her mentor? What would you say? What should she do?
Now a time there is there is most awareness everywhere. Then there should be a clear understanding between the postdoc and the mentor. If a mentor has did something wrong, then it is their relation, and clarity should be must in the understanding. Give and take policy should be there. If they are ready to interchange their ideas, it is okay. If she is not feeling well, that she want their independent research, then she should confront with the mentor also. She should be bold enough to confront with the mentor. What I think so.
Okay, fine. Thank you for your suggestions. Anybody else would like to comment on this situation? You may come forward, unmute yourself.
Sir, I am Sandrukma from Tamil Nadu, Institute of Technology. Mentor indirectly, he is asking his postdoc fellow to implement his idea for the next review. Postdoctoral fellow should implement what are the proposals he submitted for his grant. He has to implement for the forthcoming review. So the mentor, that's actually she. Yes, for the forthcoming review. The mentor actually wants this from your postdoctoral fellowship.
Okay. All right.
Mentor indirectly ask her postdoctoral fellow his ideas should be implemented for the forthcoming review. The mentor actually wants this from her postdoctoral fellow. Actually, it's a theoretical idea for a grant proposal. For the forthcoming review, for the coming review, the postdoctoral fellow should implement her ideas, right? Maybe in theoretical for grant proposal, it should be implemented for the forthcoming review. But the mentor actually wants from her postdoctoral fellow. The grant proposal ideas may be theoretical one.
Yeah, Professor, come to the question at hand. You have described the situation very well. Now, the postdoc has come to you with this situation, explaining the situation to you, and she wishes to confront her mentor. Would you advise her to confront her mentor, or what would you say to the postdoc person?
If I am mentor, I am going to suggest the postdoctoral fellow just not forcing, but I am giving some advice that your idea must be implemented practically. For the coming review, you should implement your idea. At least all ideas for grant proposal, 2 or 3 ideas must be practically implemented. Implement it for forthcoming review. If I am mentor, I am asking my postdoctoral fellow to implement those ideas practically for the forthcoming review.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, who is this?
Yes. If we look at the point of view or from the side of the student or the postdoctoral fellow, it's an unethical part. Like if you look at the mentor side, it's unethical, and the mentor should ask or should have told the fellow that he will be using his work for he can take the reference of his work for his future projects. And when we talk about the concept of the students, in that context, it was fine, because when we talk about research, we only talk about the literature review. We go through various literature reviews, and out of which we find out the gaps and we find out the future aspects of future working. So if you look at the point of view of the postdoctorate fellow, it was ethical, and on the point of mentor, it was unethical because the fellow was not aware about it. And I guess the postdoctor fellow must confront the mentor, and there should be a healthy conversation first of all. But if the person is not finding any solution, if there's no solution between both the parties, then the postdoc fellow must talk to the higher authorities to sort it out, to sort the things out for them. Yes.
Okay, just introduce yourself, by the way.
My name is Komal. Komal Daya.
Komal.
GVM.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Komal. Thank you so much for your views. And let's move on to some other participants. They may also have something to say. Anybody else also? Yes?
Madhavan Ashok.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, actually, the fellow has come with a complaint that the mentor has used her ideas in her review. Now, the problem is, see, this is coming to us seeking an advice whether to confront the mentor. Now we have to actually see how many such complaint has come on the mentor. Whether such postdoctoral fellows have come had any such, that we have to see. And we also have to see that this mentor has only given a complaint, whether this was taken, quoted by the mentor. Because that will bring in the review, that will bring the credit to the mentor also. If the mentor is taking it as her own idea, her or his own idea, then it is wrong. Or if it is in the review, if the mentor is trying to highlight the kind of work done by the postdoctor in her review, then maybe that's not a serious issue. Or if it is otherwise, then we can advise the postdoctor fellow to confront directly. And if it is coming to, depending on which hierarchy level it is going, this complaint is going, then we can probably think of expelling the mentor also, or the suitable punishment can be given to the mentor.
Okay, thank you for sharing your views on this.
Sir, I would like to understand this line a bit better. That the postdoc came up with the idea for the proposal after reading her mentor's annual report.
Yes.
So eventually, the idea was generated by the content which was given by the mentor only. Right?
Yeah, I mean, read the situation carefully, how the things have evolved, how that idea has been propagating, you know, from the mentor's report into this course on grant writing. And, you know, maybe it was just a brief mention of the idea, maybe, you know, maybe a keyword that was mentioned in the annual report. I mean, those details are not mentioned here, but it could have been something of a very, very minor thing mentioned. But then look at the second sentence. She has developed the idea thoroughly, and in that thorough development of the idea, her mentor has only given minimal assistance.
When this has happened, that means the relation between the postdoc and the mentor were not that good, that he has come up with a trust issue on his on her own mentor, and she has gone for an advice to third person rather than directly talking to her mentor. That means she was not having that good relations, so she could have talked about the issue directly to him. She sought an advice from the third person. That means there is a trust issue. And when you are in a research, I think that this type of research, trust issues, when they come, when you are not trusting your mentor and the mentor is taking the content of their juniors or the credit of their juniors, I think that relationship should not continue for long. So confrontation is the thing, and moreover, talking is the only way out.
Okay, I think somebody else also was saying something. Go ahead.
Sir, may I?
Yeah, who's this?
So this is Simi Sharma.
Yeah,
sir,
okay.
I guess there is there is some communication gap between both of them. They both are finding the idea to be good, and there is lack of acceptance also. I mean, the guide is not accepting that she has came up with a good idea, elaborated. He was having just a basic idea about that, and she had done research on it. She has elaborated the idea, and there is some communication gap between them. They are not able to express or appreciate each other. And on ethical point, it is also not correct on ethical grounds also.
Okay, fine. So I thank each and every one of you for expressing your views on this matter. And, you know, this is not the only situation that you would deal with in your academic life. I'm sure many of you must have experienced similar aspects when you are part of the research process, when you are advising your students, or you are in the student role and, you know, seeking advice from your guide or your mentors, or, you know, for that matter, your colleagues, whenever you are working on joint projects. So these are very, very common occurrences. And, you know, these are the situations wherein really our, you know, underlying set of values and ethical practices should guide us, rather than, you know, us going on a misleading path, or being confused about the situation, not really knowing what to do, or not really having the courage to do the right thing. So this is also a typical occurrence. I think if the set of expectations, if the set of norms and the guidelines are clarified from the very beginning, it would probably avoid, you know, these kind of situations to even begin with, and amicable solution can be really worked out. So definitely, you know, many ideas have come forth. Anyways, these are very tricky situations. Sometimes, you know, these are not the only ones. You might have other experiences also. But moving ahead, you know, thinking about the future of how we are going to structure our educational practices, In fact, we can also take inspiration from the National Education Policy 2020. Look at this, the fundamental principles that will guide both the education system at large as well as the individual institutions within it. There are a lot of different principles. I've just tried to highlight the principles around ethics and values. Look at this, right? Ethics, human and constitutional values like empathy, respect for others, cleanliness, courtesy, democratic spirit, spirit of service, respect for public property, scientific temper, liberty, responsibility, pluralism, equality, and justice. So all very, very important characteristics, all very important attributes of ethical and value-based behavior and actions that continue to guide all of us within the educational ecosystem. And our National Education Policy 2020 also, which was released last year, emphasizes this fact once again. So I would encourage all the participants present here today, no matter which role you are currently in, if you are part of the educational ecosystem, let us bear in mind these kind of fundamental principles and practices that can ensure not only a quality in the educational scenario, but also quality coupled with a lot of ethical as well as value-based holistic development of all the stakeholders. So with that, once again, I would like to thank the entire organizing team for giving me an opportunity and a platform to interact with all of you today. It's been a pleasure, and as I mentioned, feel free to stay in touch with me. I welcome your feedback, I welcome your comments, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much for your time, and I will turn it back to our organizing team for any concluding remarks they may have. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, in that short case study, you have mentioned the situation, but what can, if it is unethical and it is a mentor's problem in that, then can the postdoc person or postdoc student can confront or not? Is it the right practice or not? Because every time we see that fellows are feel fear of their job, of their degree, and they feel they are suppressed by the mentors. We see many times. Even many of us feel this type of situation also. So is the confrontation is good or not?
Yeah, very good question. It all depends upon, your perspective of looking at things. As I said, these are very convoluted situations. And the best thing to do is to avoid getting into this situation from the get-go. My suggestion would be, from the very beginning, you should have a clear understanding about, the contributions of each and every research team member, whether it is, the first author or the second author, or, who should be the first one, who should be the second one, should somebody's name appear on the research report or not, what is their percentage of contribution, and what are the clear, set of boundaries that one should establish in any research endeavor for that matter. So the more clarity you have from the beginning, the lesser issues you will have later on in the research process. So sir, that is where.
But you feel so that nowadays what we think that is a student is in a capacity to make it clear. It should be from the mentor side, not from the because he is on the beggar cannot be the chooser. The situation is like this. So how can he? उसमें तो हिम्मत ही नहीं है सर इतना सब बोलने की मुझे लगता है कहीं ना कहीं हमें कहीं पिंच किया है ये क्वेश्चन because थोड़ा बहुत हम भी कहीं ना कहीं फेस करते हैं इस तरह की situation.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And see, this is where we need to not only conduct sessions on ethics and values for the students, but sessions such as these where we sensitize the faculty members, where we sensitize the academic leaders, academic administrators about how do you create a conducive environment in your own institution where such things can be, openly discussed, where there will be no fear of retribution in anybody's mind for that matter, whether it is a student, whether it is a staff member, whether it can be, any person in the hierarchy. So there has to be a mechanism wherein, only the best practices would be followed irrespective of, who you are, what you are doing, and as I said, without fear of retribution. So the responsibility lies heavily on the the shoulder of the faculty, the academic leaders, and the administrators, whether they are able to, promote such an environment in their institution where each and every person feels empowered to be able to do the right thing at all times.
But in university system, we don't think so. This is the environment that is happened. It is just कहनी कथनी और करनी में there is always a difference between.
That is where, if you recall, I began my session with the biggest challenge facing accreditation bodies worldwide is, adherence to ethics and values. It's one of the biggest challenges there is around, more than the documentation and other things. Unless we really inculcate a lot of, best practices in all our stakeholders, the system may not change overnight, but we have to try, and we will continue to do so. And I'm sure with our collective efforts, we will be able to make that difference.
So thank you, sir. Thank you for your knowledge and for your expertise.
Thank you. Thank you.
So research is something which is of the personal interest. It should be motivated from inner self for your own growing and for own knowledge and things like that. When you bind your research work with the increments, these things bound to happen in those cases.
Yeah. Yeah, but there is a way to.
But I think so that for increment only the research can be done. Otherwise, personal interest में जब theory X and theory Y says कि there is no need. अगर जब तक कि उनके ऊपर एक motivation नहीं होगा, तब तक research भी नहीं होगा. What I feel so.
Yeah. No, there are various, purposes of why somebody undertakes a research initiative. But at the end of the day, it all matters what kind of clear understanding you have with reference to what are ethical practices in research or, for that matter, any other academic endeavor, not just research. But it might be about, examination systems. It might be about attendance. It might be about, content delivery, content design, whatever it might be. You can think about many, many things, and it is all, interrelated. So we have to, stay alert and always fall back on the fundamental principles. So once again, thank you everyone. Thank you so much. I look forward to continuing our conversation some other time. And as I said, feel free to be in touch. I would be happy to continue our association. Over to the organizing team once again. Thank you.
Professor,
thank you so much, sir,
yes,
for making us aware about the basics of values and ethics and code of conduct for education industry and motivating our participants to the same. Thank you so much once again for this interactive session.
Sir, Professor, last year I attended your 3-day workshop conducted in Bhopal, sir. You are working in scientific education central government.
Okay. Did you attend the evidence-based teaching and learning workshop?
Yeah, I'm using Stack workflow for Stack workspace and your examiner quizzes.
Yes, with ISER Bhopal, the 3-day workshops, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very nice that you have joined us again. Thank you so much for reminding me of that. Hope everything is well with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, all the respected participants, so tomorrow's session will begin at 10 a.m. sharp, and the session will be on concept of PEO and PO, CO, PO mapping and attainment. That will be delivered by Professor Sandeep Grover, JC Bose University of Science and Technology, YMCA, Faridabad. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, see you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.